Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm out here walking along Menno Road in Breslau. The sun is rising up behind me. Been listening to some devotionals by Francis Chan this week. And today we looked at James chapter 1 from verses 13 on to 15, where he talks about temptation and that when we are tempted, we should never say that it's God that's tempting us, because God isn't given to temptation, nor does he tempt others, but rather to understand that temptation comes within. Paul would have said it comes from the old man, the old part of us that has not been redeemed for God. And here in James says we are enticed by our own desires, not anything that God has to do, but we're enticed by our own desires. And when we give in to those own desires, the result is death, the stench of death. And there's this image of a fish swimming wonderfully, has all sorts of choice foods hanging around in the pond, and someone drops in a fishing line with a worm on it, and all of a sudden the worm is enticed because he doesn't have to root or dig for this. The worm is right there. And unfortunately, when he goes for the worm, it grasps him and it leads to death. Francis Chan also gave this image of temptation growing like a birth until it is fully formed, and then it gives birth. But it's not the birth of a normal child, it's a stillborn birth. And so all that anticipation of the joy that would come afterwards results in empty disappointment, because we're left with nothing. We're left with nothing but death. And that's what temptation does for us. It leads us to desire something that ultimately doesn't satisfy. This morning, I just want to admit together with you that there are things in my life that continue to tempt me, even as I grow older. Things that continue to draw my attention away from pursuing after God. And James's instruction to his church is to say, turn away, turn towards God, turn away from that which entices us, because it's only going to lead to disappointment and death. Turn towards God. So my prayer for you this morning on my walk is that God would continue to allow us in those areas where we are tempted, whether we're tempted for things like that extra dessert that we really don't need, guilty, whether it's tempted with the lust of the eyes or the lust of the flesh, whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's tempted to not trust in God, tempted to lose faith, that in those places God invites us not to give into that temptation, but rather to turn towards him and realize that he is always there waiting for us to raise us up again and give us life, and that abundantly. God bless you this morning. Praying for you on my walk.